I'm back with another one of these spur-of-the-moment discussion videos. However, this one, not quite so spur-of-the-moment. I've been getting questions about this topic for a while, and so today I finally decided that I would sit down, I'd calculate the math to come up with, I guess, something of a formula for how this process actually works. So, not quite as spur-of-the-moment as some of my other discussions. This one was a little more premeditated, I guess. I have everything written out in front of me, so it's not a script, but I've got something to work with this time around. But yes, title of the video, the question of this discussion, how long does it take to make an average episode of Universe Mode? I get this question a lot. Well, not as much as some of the other questions I've discussed, but every once in a while it'll pop up, and usually I just kind of give like a rough estimate based on what I kind of assumed my production time was, because I don't typically keep track of, you know, how long it takes to make these things. But today, I sat down, I thought everything out. This formula that I've come up with isn't exactly perfect. It's got its holes, but most of the numbers here are rounded down because I figured that way that would not necessarily be more accurate, but if I rounded up for things or just kind of left things inconsistent, then my numbers could perhaps be a little more bloated than what maybe they necessarily are. And for some of these, the numbers aren't exactly concrete, which I guess I can evaluate. I can delve into that in more detail as I get into this. But what I did was I looked back at the last 4 episodes of Universe Mode that I made. At the time of this recording, that would be the first 4 episodes of WWE 2K18. So what I did was I combined the total runtime of those first 4 episodes, the material that was uploaded to YouTube, and then I found the average. So I took the 4 videos, added them up, divided it by 4, the number of uploads that they were, and the average runtime that I came up with was around 33 minutes. That's what I came up with. So then what I did was I took the raw recording files of each of those videos, and then I divided them up. Well, I found the average of the 4 recording files. So the average recording time for this average episode of Universe Mode, which we've estimated is about 33 minutes. And if I remember, I'll put some sort of like visual display on screen so you can at least follow along with the math I'm coming up with here. Or maybe I'll just show you the screenshot of this text document I have. I don't know how I'm going to do this yet, but for this average episode of 33 minutes, what am I saying? For this 33-minute upload, the average recording time for that I determined to be 79 minutes. So right off the bat, you're already looking at over twice the amount of time that, so the final material that you're looking at, it took me, and usually this is pretty accurate, it usually takes me about twice that to record it. Now this is just to record it, because obviously there's going to be all the menus that I gotta cut out, and when I guess I should clarify that this formula really only applies to my style of Universe Mode, and just the people who make more of the presentation style of that sort of a series. And of course, with all my numbers here, they're gonna kind of fluctuate depending on what goes down. Some episodes, usually like my recording sessions, will span anywhere between an hour, usually that's around the short end, to about an hour and 40 minutes is kind of like the average, lengthy recording. Usually, I will max out my time at 2 hours because with the way I'm used to recording things, I'll rely on Elgato's flashback recording. Elgato is the capture card that I use, and it has a feature where you can use, it's called flashback recording, so you don't have to actually have the program, or rather you don't have to actually be actively recording, but you can go back and kind of like bulk record the last 2 hours of footage so long as you have the program open. And usually that works better for me because definitely on my older laptop where it did not have the processing power to run that. So if I wanted to record HD footage, I would have to flip over. I usually go into whatever the second tab is, where it just kind of archives the footage. I'll just sit there, leave that screen up for the amount of time that I'm recording, and then I'll tab back over to capture, drag it all the way back to the beginning of the bar when I started recording, record that big session. So I have up to 2 hours that I can use there. So usually the max that I'll have of a recording file is 2 hours. Now, this is for an average Universe Mode episode. This obviously doesn't count pay-per-views. With pay-per-views, usually I'll record a couple of different matches at a time, or depending on, like for WrestleMania, sometimes I would have an entire session just dedicated to one particular match, depending on how much editing went into it. Like the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team matchup, Elimination for WrestleMania, that one got its own recording file. And then, I don't know, it might have had part of a second one just because of... Well, actually, that one was, again, split up over however I would divide it up. But basically, I limit myself to 2 hours. That way, like, I could probably now with this laptop, I think it can sustain actually recording HD footage live and not doing the flashback thing. But I like to not take forever to make a Universe Mode episode, at least in the recording phase, so having that hard limit at 2 hours really helps me just to kind of rein myself in, not go too overboard with what I'm producing. Usually I don't hit that 2 hour mark though. As I said earlier, the shorter end of the spectrum is around roughly an hour, and that's on a really good day where I have no issues with it, no real botches, everything goes together pretty nicely, it just kind of progresses smoothly, and then around the hour 40 minutes or so is when I have a bunch of mistakes that I have to cut out. So 79 minutes, that's about an hour, 19 minutes, that's right around that mid-range, so I'd say it's a pretty accurate time. Then, so that's just the recording aspect of it. We're already over twice the amount of material that's being uploaded to YouTube. It takes at least twice that amount of time to produce it, but that's just for the recording phase. Then we jump into editing, which with editing, this one really fluctuates because, like I said, with even just the recording time, sometimes if there aren't a whole lot of botches I have to edit out, then the editing time is going to be less. Like it's gonna take less to edit because I don't have to worry about cutting out botches. Really, I'm just taking out the menu screens and whatnot. But at the same time, I could have an episode with a lot of mistakes, and maybe I have to do some fancy stuff with, especially now in 2K18 when you have like free cam in the highlight reel, so you can go around and mess with some stuff there, or maybe I have a promo that I'm making for something, just anything more like editing intensive, or I have to like mask out a replay screen or something. Those are types of things that I can't really account for in this sort of formula I'm trying to create here. So, you know, it does kind of vary, but I figure with editing, typically it doesn't take me any longer than it takes me to record, but it's not like if I'm editing a 33-minute video, I'm not going to be able to just edit that in 33 minutes because I got to cut material out and move everything around the timeline. So I decided to reach a happy middle ground at about 1.5 times the amount of the final product. So that's a good middle ground between, say, twice the amount versus the exact amount of the video. Because, I mean, the recording time wasn't quite twice the amount. It's more like 2.5, but it's a decent calculation, I think, on my part. So what I did was I multiplied the 33-minute final product times 1.5. Now I have 49 minutes of editing time. And again, take that number with a grain of salt because it's not really concrete. It does fluctuate depending on the type of video, but that's about the best I can come up with. So then, of course, we're going to add that to our 79 minutes of recording time. But then, because that's not it, if I just wanted to upload the video like that, no one's going to watch it because it's got no commentary, so obviously I have to dub over it, I have to provide my commentary, and provided that everything goes smoothly, I don't make any mistakes, I don't have to restart or redub anything else, we have the final length of the video, which is the 33 minutes. So we have 33 minutes of commentary time to add on top of our 49 minutes of editing time and our 79 minutes of recording time. With commentary, usually that's a pretty consistent number. It's going to be the length of the final video. Usually I don't make too many mistakes, or, I mean, usually I don't get interrupted. So usually that's a pretty concrete number. And then this last step is kind of optional. If you've done the last 3 steps the same way that I do, like if, I don't know, someone like Murph's YT13 or Delzinski, I would like to think that their production style would be somewhat similar to this. Their recording times may vary because they, at least from what I've seen, sometimes they do more with the highlight reel. So, like, obviously, with now using the highlight reel, if you want to get different camera angles for such, that's going to all factor into recording time. And then I guess with editing, then if you do certain layouts or whatever, you got to position that around. But those types of production details will more often than not go into recording time. But then I also factor in another 33 minutes of commentary playback. The reason why I do this, it's not necessary, but I'll go back through my audio and check for mistakes, and also just make sure that my audio lines up with the footage, because I'd hate to upload something and count, like, just have the audio be out of sync. So like if we count a pinfall or something, but the pinfall happened 5 seconds ago or hasn't happened yet, that really bothers me when the audio's out of sync. And I know in the past I had big issues with that on the old computer because, again, processing power would always kill me, so sometimes my audio would screw up and then things would be out of sync and I'd sound all weird. But mainly it was the bit of being out of sync that just really killed me, because I can't listen to a video that isn't in sync, and if it's something that I have to like look at visually and also listen to, it gets really annoying when things don't match up, especially for like pinfalls or certain spots or surprise appearances. Like, you can't be spoiling a shock arrival because the commentary is 10 seconds out of sync, and so you have like, oh my god, The Rock is in the building, but nobody will see that for the following like 8 seconds because audio's out of sync. So yeah, I'll listen to the commentary back just to make sure everything is in sync, make sure I don't like sneeze or, I don't know, get a drink of water or whatever in the middle of the recording, make sure that that's all edited out, or if there's any like background interference, I take care of that. So yeah, I do that just to make sure that everything sounds good, that I didn't make any other mistakes involved during that commentary session. Also, this commentary playback time, it doesn't account for like advertisement segments, is what I call them. So like when I'm promoting something that happens on the next week's show, you know, those segments that are like, I'll narrate them separately. So like when I do like the match card rundown for a big upcoming event, that I do that separately, because I know that if I gave myself only a set amount of time to say whatever I need to say about all the matches and also pace them out equally, so that way I could cover them all in the amount of visual time that, you know, whatever I've given myself on screen, that just wouldn't work. Sometimes I script out those segments, sometimes I just kind of go off the cuff, but if I have to try to like match a time in the middle of a recording session, and so let's say I screw something up, I botch a line, and then, well, I can't just stop the recording because then the rest of the audio after that is going to be out of sync. So it's just easier for me to do those separate segments in post. I not really like post editing, but do them after the fact, after I've done the whole episode, and then in the meantime, I'll go back and fill those segments in which case then I can cut everything out, cut out all the pauses, and just add that all together. So now, looking at our formula, we have 79 minutes of recording time, plus 49 minutes of editing time, plus 33 minutes of commentary time, plus the optional 33 minutes of commentary playback, which, add that all together, you've got about 194 minutes total. So altogether, that amount is roughly 5.8 times greater than the total upload. So basically what that means is if all of this time actually went into one single video and I didn't have to account for commentary editing or any of those extra stages, you would basically be getting that 33-minute video roughly 6 times over. That's the amount of editing that I'm, not strictly editing, but that's the amount of time that I am putting into this 33-minute video. Now, what I did not account for in that instance was rendering time. This is going to vary between, you know, based on how good your computer is. I know my old laptop was ridiculously slow. I know I have a couple of tweets here just going back to when I rendered Survivor Series, which was WWE 2K18 Survivor Series. It was the longest video, and it was also the last video that I ever rendered on that old laptop. And for that video, which ended up being, what was the final? It was about 3 hours, 33 minutes. Looking at my Twitter, I had, well, I have a couple of different ones here, but I'll read this one off. Day 2 of the Survivor Series render. We are 36 hours in, almost, and we finally hit the 50% mark. So that would mean that 3.5 hour video took about 72 hours to render. which is ridiculously slow. I have never heard of another computer that ran that slowly. I mean, not to say that my computer was definitely the slowest at the time, because I'm sure that there, at least definitely like back in the day, there would have been way slower machines than that. But that computer was not made for the type of, for what I was doing with it. It was a really cheap thing. It was not meant for video production. But the one that I have now doesn't take nearly that much time. It takes about twice the length of the video in render time. So for a 33-minute video, that means I have to spend about 66 minutes rendering that bad boy. And again, this varies with computers. I know that there are other ones that will have this much faster because they'll have better processing time. If I had an actual desktop PC or something, you know, not a laptop, I'm sure I could go way faster than that, and rendering wouldn't even be a problem. But for the sake of what I'm working with right now, that's an extra 66 minutes on top of the 194, which, if you add that together, that's now a new total of 260 minutes, which is roughly 7.87 times more than our final 33-minute video. Now, I'm not going to account for uploading time because I know for me, my internet can be inconsistent, and usually it doesn't even matter what the uploading time is, because this stage doesn't generally affect my work rate. With rendering, I wanted to keep that separate. I wanted to keep render time separate from the actual production time, but usually with rendering, I'm not gonna also edit a video while I'm rendering, because my computer is gonna be running slower because I'm rendering the video. Now, this isn't like with my old computer, where if I rendered a video, I could not use that machine because that was taking everything. My computer was giving everything it had to that render. So even if I wanted to load up a web page, it would not function. It would take an eternity to load. Even if I just wanted to refresh a tab, it's gonna take like 30 seconds to load that bad boy. Whereas nowadays, my computer, I can at least browse the internet, I can use other programs and not have too much of an issue. And heck, sometimes I have done some like light editing in the background, like I've edited just commentary. Like, I know for my like Behind the Universe, Raw vs. SmackDown stuff, where mainly I'm just editing audio. That's something I can easily do, or if I record something like this, which isn't too visually intensive, I can do that kind of editing in the background. Sometimes it depends on how my computer's running that day, but usually for me, it's just easier to let the render go in the background and just do something else, watch a YouTube video or whatever. So that's why I am also going to include the render time in this, but not upload time, because once it's on the web browser, that's on YouTube's YouTube and my internet to upload and process that. So at that point, it's basically out of my hands. Now, I could be nitpicky here and also include like time to put in annotations or descriptions, but how do you quantify that? And then also, I'm not accounting for making the attires, or if I do a custom arena, which I typically don't do, but other content creators, like I know Murphs does his own arenas. If you have someone like Heel Diggy who does a completely custom series, then you also have to factor in the load times for that. So I'm sure their recording time is greater than mine usually, just for the sake of loading. And then also, if you want to take in like a separate number for like creations to make all the attires and arenas and whatnot, that would also add on to that total. But for this, to tie everything up, a 33-minute video, if that's what I'm uploading to you, you multiply the 33 minutes times our formula, the 5.87, so that gives you roughly about the 194 minutes that we came up with in the beginning, and then divide that by 60 for 60 hours in a minute. That's how time works. No, divide that by 60 minutes in an hour. So that 33-minute video took about 3.2 hours, which is about 3 hours and 12 minutes to make. So that's just with the average Universe Mode video. Now, I've already kept you for this long, so I figured why not? Just for fun, we're going to apply this formula to WrestleMania. So, my WrestleMania pay-per-view was 5 hours and 47 minutes. If I wanted to round up, it'd be 5 hours and 48 minutes, but we're not going to do that. I'm rounding down, just because, I don't know. I think it's just smarter to do that. So that would equal 347 minutes. Multiply that by 5.87. You get, roughly rounded down, 2,036 minutes. Divide that by 60 minutes in an hour. You have 33.93 hours. So for WrestleMania, the 5-hour and 47-minute video that you got took me roughly 34 hours to make, which, if you count that as like an 8-hour workday, that's about 4.25 days. If I had edited it all in one shot, that's about a day and a half. Well, not quite a day and a half, but, you know, roughly, we're pretty close to that. So, for anyone who wanted to know how long it takes to make a universe mode video, or at least for me specifically, how long it takes me to make this stuff, there you go. That's how long it takes. So, granted, this is not going to apply to everyone. Like, if I were to do a casual universe mode where it's just like my GM mode content, for example, that is just, I sit down, I do the recording and the commentary in one shot. So right there, you can take away the extra commentary time. The editing time at that point factors into the commentary playback, because usually, like, maybe we'll keep about the 1.5 times, because like with a GM mode video, I obviously have to remove the parts where I'm not talking, remove the loading screens, but transitioning between those is simple because I can just fade, as opposed to actually having to account for like crowd cutaways or change up the pan crop to make everything look like a smooth presentation. I don't worry about that with my more casual content. So whether it's like a Nuzlocke video, like a Pokemon video, or GM mode, or this would also apply to a casual universe, I can do the commentary playback and the editing in about the same time frame. So right there, you're cutting down on the commentary time and the commentary playback, which that's a pretty big difference in the grand scheme of things. So if I was just making a series where, like, if I did simulation style, for example, and I just did commentary over top of the gameplay while it was happening, which I don't even think that's what, like, for someone like Brennan Plays, I doubt that that's actually how he does things, because even then, there are certain things you do have to edit out, or he'll add in things after the fact. So I highly doubt that he just records commentary while he's recording the gameplay. I think he does a bit of editing in there as well. But for the more like casual stuff, where if I was just playing the game and doing commentary at the same time, would take significantly less time. So when I say that, like, if you see me uploading like a GM mode video, or in the future if I ever do a casual universe mode, and you see maybe more of that content coming out more frequently than the other stuff, that's kind of an insight as to why, because it takes significantly less time to edit. Like, if I was just producing GM mode videos like that style, I could get content out way faster, just because it wouldn't take as much editing or commentary stuff. Like, I don't have to break all that up into separate stages. So I think that's enough. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I hope it gave you some insight as to how producing a universe mode works, or at least a universe mode like what I do. Yeah, it's definitely not... It's definitely a time investment. You definitely have to really enjoy what you're doing to put in that amount of effort. Like, I've been doing this for years, and I haven't even really thought about it. Like, it was only just recently today, which yesterday at the time this video gets uploaded, but I was only just sort of thinking about this. Like, I've thought about it for a while, but never really actually sat down to calculate everything. So this was a fun experiment for me. I hope it was a fun experiment for you. Thank you for listening to another one of these discussion videos. It's a long one, but it wasn't nearly as rambly as some of the other ones were. But if I keep talking, I'm going to push that to the limit. So thank you for joining me once again, and until next time, keep on YouTubing.